Good morning guys, we are back in the shed again. This time we're actually going to take our time to go through and install a REDARC dual battery isolator kit. If you don't like following instructions, don't worry, we will go through each and every step involved in installing your dual battery isolator. Before we go much further, of course, we have to get this thing out of the way. This is my main battery for my truck. Super easy. Of course, working on your electronics of your truck, you want to have the battery unplugged anyway. You don't really want power coursing through the veins of the vehicle you're working on. Pull this thing out of the way. So this is our battery isolator. Nice and simple. It's got two terminals on its top. This is going to be for your battery positive feed in, and it's feed out to the auxiliary battery. Little blue cable here. This is able to put in a switch, overrides this so I can grab power from my rear battery in the event that I need to jump start my own truck, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, you can put a little LED light in there as well to be able to enable and see when your actual isolator is working. Black one, of course, that's your ground. That's what's going to be joined to our ground on our body here. So if I want that within range, I've got two little holes tucked in down here that are almost perfect length apart for me to be able to ground it right there. The fiddly ass part where you got to contort your hands inside your panels. 10mm nut and bolt with a nylock nut on the back end so you won't move. Now it's just a matter of doing the damn thing up. If it doesn't have a successful ground, it's not going to get the voltage it needs to be able to switch the batteries, and therefore you're either going to end up not putting juice to your rear one or not putting juice to your rear one. So the ground here is sufficient enough, although it is a bit ratty, so we'll go ahead and clean that up while we're in here anyway. Next step's an easy one. It's just a matter of joining those grounds together. So we might as well take that one off the body and put the SBI one on. Can be worth here taking some old scraggly sandpaper and just clean up both those grounds a little bit, just to make sure that everything gets the proper connection it needs. Little scrap on that, doesn't need much. Bam! So on to the positive side. The SBI kit from REDARC, as I said, comes with everything you need. So we got that 60 amp fuse right there. We've got the fuse holder. We've got a few positive cables to go ahead that are already pre-cut to length and already have the terminals on the end of them, which is brilliant. Also with that terminal cover, which is mean. So we might as well tuck that onto the one that needs to be tucked onto. So there you go, because of course this one is the big fat one. This is going to go onto our SBI itself. The other end is a nice little one, is what's going to go into our fuse holder. Perfect fit. We'll undo the other end. So same again, we've got that fat end, that square end's going to go into our fuse holder. 60 amp fuse can just sit on top there. Bam, and we'll crank that down. Don't want to crank them too tight, just shake it a bit, get it on there, clack it shut. The REDARC kit comes cut to length. So I've gone through and actually altered mine a little bit. So in saying that this end here, as you can see, it's not actually sitting quite neatly in there. That is my bad, because I've shortened this to the perfect length so it goes directly from battery to fuse, as the one from REDARC comes with well extended beyond the ends there. Next across, you can see there, I've cut it and resoldered it and heat shrinked it so that we can actually have the correct length, and that will go perfect length from the fuse to the SBI. Now what we're going to do is just install it. Super simple, everything's cut to length. I've measured it prior, and we're actually going to mount it in behind my fuse box here on the side. So all my fuses in the engine bay are kind of together. I know where everything is and I can troubleshoot pretty easily. That's the perfect length to get across to my positive. That's the perfect length to get down to the SBI. Your SBI here has two terminals on top of it. Now it's the one at the front here, which is going to take your positive power from your starter battery. Crank that down just tight enough and drag that little puppy on. With that, we're now set up for power to come to the isolator and now to go to the rear battery. So let's actually go take a look at the rear battery, where I've mounted it and how I'm going to run the cables there. So she's a heck of a lot brighter out here, but in the back here I've got my secondary battery, my house battery. This is all temporary structure, so I had to make it sort of a temporary housing, but it's doing it nicely. If we jump on the other side of it, back here is a bit of a mess, but I am going to go through and tidy up all this cable here, do a bit of cable management. Basically, plan is positive terminal through here, negative terminal through here. All you need to do is run the cable from here along and then following the body line where already all my power cables run. Let's take a quick look at what has been supplied. We've had a look at some of the components. Let's have a look at the rest of them. This is now running power from our isolator to our house battery. So of course you get a big length of cable here. This is actually more than you get. I've gone through and had to add additional because of the length of the vehicle I'm running. Of course, As I mentioned, it's only designed to really run in your engine bay. So if you want to run it in the rear of your vehicle, you can, but you're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking. So I've tweaked it a little bit and added in an extra length of cable there. There's the joiners on either end. Of course, you get another 60 amp fuse as well. Collect that up, and that terminal cover. With running it to the house battery, I want to keep it nice and tidy. So I've also gone through, picked up myself a positive terminal. I've clamped that in there, and actually this was the cable that came for this end, of course. So REDARC supplied this cable. I've cut it short and clamped it into the terminal, same as this section. REDARC supplied this cable, and I've cut it in half and added additional. All in all, this should be everything. We can just run the cable now. As I mentioned before, run it down the side of the vehicle where already my power cables are. Big thing here you have to think about is, or take note about, is of course running the correct end of the cable. If I'm running this to full length, I don't want to take it back out again. So big thick one goes onto my isolator, the square one goes onto my fuse, which is at the back of my car next to the additional battery. So we'll run the square one. Tucked back here is a bit of a grommet that breaks through into the firewall and into the cab, so I'm going to use that. So we'll feed it how I want to feed it, tuck it in behind everything. Cable management, guys, if you take the moment to sort of worry about it when you're installing it, it makes it a heap easier troubleshooting later on when something's not working. As often as possible, you want to be pushing cable, not pulling cable. When you start pulling it, if it gets caught on something, of course, you can start breaking things, tearing things. Pushing it, you'll feel resistance, so we'll go check it out. Sure enough, it was just bunched up, so we can keep feeding the rest of it through now. There we go, sorted. Older vehicles are nice and easy to work with. With a few screws, I've got the panel off. Now all I'm doing is just running the power cable adjacent to the current power cables and tucking it through to the back. The final stretch of it now, we've got the cable run all the way from the SBI, aiming at my battery here. Got the terminal set up with the other terminal for my fuse. That can be mounted somewhere, say there. Run him through from the back, pop on through there. With that run, next one is of course nice and simple. Power from the SBI goes on, and a little 8mm nut to hold it there. That's our positive side set up and done. We'll go through and tidy it up just a little bit and just zip tie the entire length of it just to keep it all nice and neat. With all the cables run and done, last thing is put the battery in, make sure she all works. Negative on, positive on, and of course we now have to get our fused cable onto the terminal. Nice and easy. Now we can start the truck. The SBI itself actually lights up when it is working, so we might as well start the truck, get some voltage to here and see if I've done a good job or not. Sure enough, she's lit up down in there. Now that isolator is still going to be lit up for a little bit longer. There's 13 volts sitting in my battery. Once that starts to drop and get past 13 volts, the isolator is going to tick off and cut power to that rear house battery. So you can always be sure that you can start your vehicle in the morning. However, if for whatever reason you leave your lights on, it's handy to be able to use your house battery to jump start your front one. So if you want to see me install the override switch, check out the video up to your right hand side. If you want to get your own SBI kit, check out the description below. And if you really enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and we will catch you next time. Cheers for joining in.